Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is Ventriloquist Steve Hewlett. We talk at great length about his time in pantomime, how he got started in ventriloquism, and what life was really like on the Osmonds tour bus. So please sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. Well, my guest today is Mr. Steve Hewlett. Hello, Steve.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. You brought some friends as well, I see, but we'll go into them a little bit later on.
Yes.
So, Steve, did you come from a theatrical family? Were you heavily influenced by anybody?
Not
in
at
the
all.
Family?
No, I was just a normal child, if you can call me normal. I was quite a shy child, actually, and my parents sat us down one day, said there's a local entertainer on TV tonight. We sat and watched New Faces 1987 TV variety talent show, which is the BGT of the day, and Jimmy Tamley was his name. He was a comedy ventriloquist, and I was 12 years old. We watched him. My whole family loved him. We all phoned up after we voted for him to win. He won the grand final that night. Joe Pasquale came second. But Jimmy was overnight, celebrity. So I knew where he lived because my mate at school lived opposite him, and he asked me if he said, "Do you want to meet Jimmy?" So the next day after school, I went down, knocked on his door, and got a signed photo of Jimmy and his characters. I went back the next day to get a picture from my mum. I went back the next day to get one from my sister, and I had quite a big family. So he got to know me in that week. And I was fascinated. Literally a week after that happened, my sister came home from school with a ventriloquist dummy. And then Ray Allen had a book coming out that month called Got a Gear. So he was on the TV talking about this new book. So everything that you needed to learn to be a ventriloquist, like having one down the road, that eventually he agreed to teach me. And then a book came out, and then I ended up with a dummy as well from my sister. So all of these components happened within a month. And 2 months later, I was learning. Jimmy was teaching me. He became my mentor, And so I just started learning to be a ventriloquist. From then, I was doing assemblies and then charity shows around my local area of Basingstoke in Hampshire. And that's where it started, really. So that was my interest. But no one in my family have ever been interested or anywhere near showbiz at all.
How old were you then?
I was 12.
12.
Yes.
So, what about other activities then you were doing at that age? Were you?
I don't even remember before
Was it just
ventriloquism. BV, before ventriloquism. What happened? I used to be interested in. We always used to sit down as a family and watch variety entertainment shows and watch the Grumbleweeds, Little and Large, all of those, Barrymore, all of those shows we loved. My parents really encouraged us to watch TV and comedy and. But the first ventriloquist I remember watching was when I was about 5 at preschool. It was like junior school, I think, or infant school. I'm going back further. And at Terry Hall, Lenny the Lion, Learning with Lenny was in black and white. I must have been 5 or 6. And I remember watching this ventriloquist with the lion, but I didn't know he was a ventriloquist because when you're kids, you think these characters are real, don't you? So to me, Lenny the Lion was just a lion. But I didn't know why that man was standing behind him. And it wasn't until Jimmy Tamley won New Faces that I discovered what a ventriloquist was and how much I loved the idea of getting laughter and using a puppet and being on stage and actually covering my shyness, because I was so shy. I used the character really to hide behind. And so when I'd done school assemblies, all my characters would do most of the talking and I would just link with a couple of words, but almost like Arthur Worsley, back in the day. But it brought out my shyness. It wasn't until I got into my mid-20s I started to write stuff for myself where I started doing a bit of stand-up before or in between the characters coming out,
What was that first vent doll like? Do you remember it?
It was It was a little plastic character with a checked hat and checked jacket and bright ginger hair. I named him Jimmy after my teacher, and he was the character I'd used for at least 2 years. And then my dad took me to London on a train to Hamleys, and we bought a Pelham puppet, and it's a little ventriloquist character that you could put your hand through and use your own hand. So he was my second character, and then I just started saving for like professional characters by the time I got to 15. So, but I knew this is exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up. I started around that time of like 13 to 18. I would write to ventriloquists all the time, and I get replies from Terry Hall, Lenny the Lion, and I'd write to Ray Allen, John Boucher, all the ventriloquists that was kind of at the end of their careers, you know. And sadly, we've lost a lot of them now, but they really give me some nice advice when I started out, you know. And so it really gave me the more confidence to actually be a ventriloquist, because although it was a dying art, I was joining really when there weren't many around at all. I was always talking about Ray Allen, Roger de Courcy and Keith Harris, because that's all I knew at that time. Until the internet blew up, you know, 20 years later. And then now there's thousands out there, you know, so it's... but in the UK, they say it was a dying art. There was around about 400 ventriloquists doing pantomimes and musical theatres in the 40s and 50s. By the time it got to the 80s, there's probably about 40. And now I'd say there's about 12 ventriloquists in the UK. So it's, 13, because Max Fulham is doing really well.
The young only turned 20 the other week.
Just turned 20, yeah. Max is doing brilliant. So he's flying the flag at the moment for the younger generation, which is brilliant. And I first saw Max at a talent competition I hosted in Norfolk. I hosted a ventriloquist day, and it was at Davenport's Magic Museum, hosted by Roy Davenport, and we put together an event day. So I said, right, I'm going to do a ventriloquist competition, and we had 5 young ventriloquists, and Max was one of them. I think he came second or something, but he really stood out for me on that competition, and I thought we're going to see more of Max. You know, there was 5 really great little male ventriloquists, but to me, Max was always quite far ahead of the others. You know, he had a lot of confidence, and I remembered him, and I knew I'd see him again. And then he came back via YouTube, you know, and we've stayed in touch. He's come to a few of my shows, and he's learned a really good way. He's got to know the community of puppeteers, ventriloquists, and comedians, and we're all, we're all backing him up because he's a brilliant young vent. It reminds me of me when I was starting out, you know, and except he's a posher version, you know.
What's then important for you in terms of making your characters, not physically making them, but actually the kind of the backstory, such as Arthur Lager and...
Yeah, I was. I had a manager at a time, 2005, and he said, I think you should get an old man character. And I never really thought about that, because you get a lot of ventriloquists. They either have an old man, they have a monkey, they have a cheeky boy, or the mask, the ventriloquist mask routine. So I never thought of using the same, you know, as others. But I got an old man character in the act, and the night I put him in, I remember I was working in a hotel in Turkey. It's about 15 years ago. Yes, I was about 29, and I needed a name for him, and a friend of mine called Tucker said, well, what about Arthur Lager? He just said that his dad was called Arthur, and I just laughed at Arthur Lager. I'm going to call him Arthur Lager, I like that. So I kept that as my mate Tucker who done that, and then I had to build a character. So I took out one of my characters, called Butch, which was like a bodybuilding type character, and he wore a suit, and I pulled his suit off, and then he'd end up in his trunks. That character, about 12 years later, was turned into Simon Cowell. He was recycled.
Okay.
Yes. But I took out Butch, and I put in the old man character that night, and basically used a lot of the same material, but wrote a few more to make him sound like an old man. And Butch was like, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. How are you? It's like an American bodybuilder. And then Arthur Lager, I knew, had to be a little bit more a vintage, you know, in his vocals. So it was you have to go deeper into the back of your throat and go, oh, hello, almost like a distant voice, but not as far back. So you go, hello, Arthur Lager here, how are you? You all right? So it just sounds a little bit more like an older man. And I put him in that hotel that night, and he just stormed it. He went down the stuff. Butch never made it back into the act, and so Arthur Lager took over. It was about 15, 16 years ago. It was it's brilliant the way he just sort of came alive on my hand, you know, and the response from the audience, you know, when a character for you works, because you get the reactions. He was getting bigger reactions than Butch ever did. They laughed when you come out of the box, and that's important. And so, and the rapport between him and the lady that I picked on, it was just so much stronger than the character that I used to do it with, 3 nights before. So I thought, wow, I'm keeping Arthur Largo. And I phoned Tucker up and said, Arthur really works. And so, and he's done really well for me, Arthur. He's really my main character. So, but at the same, I was passed down a character called Pongo the Skunk. In 1995, I was doing the shows at the Blackpool Tower. Keith Harris was working there, and we met up, and he said, I've got this puppet that might suit you, and I don't use it anymore. If you want it, you can come and have a look. So I went round his house, and he got this skunk puppet out, and I sat there and played with it, and he went, take it away and see if you like it. So I put that in the summer season. I actually added it to that season at the Tower in 95, and I really liked it. So I'm now on my 3rd Pongo the Skunk. He's had a few face changes, so he sort of reflects Simon Cowell, really. So he looks different now. So Pongo just became this cheeky little character now that I've had for 25 years in the show, but he really works, he's really another one of my main characters that people love. My wife Nina loves Pongo more than Arthur, so she just loves watching Pongo because he has kind of a mind of his own when he's on the stage. And it's kind of strange. I won't say he says things I didn't know he was going to say, because I know I'm doing it all, but he does make me he makes my mind come alive when I'm on the stage. It opens up, and he does. He makes me more creative than I thought I was, So when I'm actually on stage, I write material. I do the same for Arthur Largo, but when Pongo is on my hand, he's kind of surreal. It's strange. I can't explain it, which I know you need to on a podcast.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but Pongo's character just comes alive when you see him. He's very cheeky, but he really he really drags the audience in because he's very visual. He's got big eyes. He's made by the same guy, Peter Pullen, who made Orville the Duck, and so he's got that great characteristic about him, which is just lovable, really nice to look at. So it's a cute little thing.
Was it quite daunting then meeting Keith Harris for the first time?
It was. I first met him, my first holiday, I think I was 13. I went to Weymouth Pavilion to see, we were just on a holiday, and I noticed Keith Harris was there with Bobby Crush, and we went to see him and the Simmons Brothers, great variety show. And I took my puppet, I sat in the front row with my puppet and met Keith afterwards. There was hundreds of people out there waiting for autographs. So I was he must have noticed me.
They were superstars though back in the day.
No, they were huge TV stars still, It was in the 80s. And Keith, he acknowledged, I didn't get a photo. I don't know why I didn't get a photo on that day. I don't think we had cameras then as a family. We were quite poor. That's when I first met him. And then 3 years later, I got a TV show called The Pig Attraction. It was hosted by a pig, Billy the Pig. And they were doing a section on ventriloquists. And there was a puppeteer and puppet maker called Dave Showler who passed my name. And I had a phone call saying, Keith Harris, Ray Allen are doing this TV show. Will you come down to Bristol, HTV, and film this TV show with them? I jumped at it, obviously, because Keith was one of my heroes. Excuse me. So I went down to Bristol. I had 2 days with Keith Harris, and we filmed this TV show. And it was like 4 or 5 years later when I met him in Blackpool. So we knew each other quite early on. And we became really, really close friends after 95, and we stayed in touch, every year, and Christmas cards, and we just became really good friends. And at first he started out as my idol, and then it was nice that we just chatted on mutual terms. We'd call each other and see how each other was doing. If he was going to be on TV tomorrow, he'd phone me up and said, watch me, I'm on Pointless or Celebrity Squares or whatever, and he'd ask how I'm doing. He'd give me ideas, and we'd meet up in the Algarve. When I'd done hotels, he'd come to see my show. We had dinner with his family. So we really became quite close, and the ventriloquist community is quite small, but I feel like I know all of the ventriloquists. I've got to know them by putting myself out there, and I think I just wanted to be known and part of it. And it took me a few years, but hopefully I will be talked about along with the other ventriloquists, because it's, I was one of those, like Max, that's keeping it going. And there's not many ventriloquists about that can, that can say that now. So it's, kind of tricky to it's kind of tricky to keep it alive when there's not much TV giving you a chance. And the Britain's Got Talent thing is all over the world has actually given a chance to ventriloquists, so it's it really helped us.
Well, we'll go into that a little bit later on, if that's okay. The Panto door then, when was that first open for you? Did you always want to do Panto?
I did, yeah. I wrote to Terry Hall, Lenny the Lion, when I was a kid, and he was doing Panto, and he sent me a signed program from the Panto and said, one day you should do Panto. And I got a call when I was 22 from an agent saying, we've got you a Panto. So I think it was 1998 was my first, or 97 into 98. And I'd done Panto in Peterborough. It was Aladdin for Hammond Productions. And then I'd done 3 years for Hammond. And it was in Aladdin. I was Ping and Pong. So me and Pongo the skunk were actually Ping and he was Pong. And it fit quite nicely. But I really loved doing Panto. It was, they let me do like a 6-minute spot at the Palace, before the wedding. So I knew I was going to hone my material, twice a day in that spot. But I got to act for the first time. I'd never acted before, but you have to act in Panto. The camaraderie between, working with other artists, singers, dancers and actors was, and gladiators at the time, and Page 3 girls. I'm trying to think who was in the show. It was, it was just brilliant, working with people. It was my first time really. I worked on entertainment teams before, in holiday parks, but actually learning a script for the first time and working with other artists in a big production with music and dancing, and I had to do that as well. I had to sing and dance and with a character. It was interesting to me, but it was fantastic. I loved Panto. That first 3 years of Panto for me was brilliant.
Was a little bit of it scary or daunting?
It was scary and daunting. When the lights go up, and you've had 2 weeks of rehearsals, but when the lights go up and that, in about 10 lines time, one of those lines are yours, and if you forget your lines or my puppet's lines, that whole show's going to come down, You've got all these other artists relying on you to get your bit right. And so, it's daunting in that way, because I'd always worked on my own in holiday parks and on cruise ships when I was like 22 as well. And I only relied on myself back then, and all my characters relied on me to get their lines right as a ventriloquist. But yeah, when you're working in a team, you want it to be right. You want to do your best for that whole Panto. And I had the best years doing those early Pantos. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, you get to make so many friends in Panto. That first Panto I done in 97, 98 was, I'm still friends with people from that today, about 4 or 5 of them. We're still in touch. So it really brings you closer to the community. This business, it gets smaller when you do Panto. Everyone knows everyone, so it becomes a really nice friendship base, show business just, it becomes, I think when you do Panto, you get showbiz in your blood, I don't think you're really in showbiz unless you've done a Panto. I think it really is the thing that you have to do, I think. There's just so much history in it, isn't there? And it goes back so many years with ventriloquists in Pantos. I know Arthur Worsley done a lot of Pantos as well, and someone told me once he was working with Arthur Worsley and Charlie Brown in Panto, and Charlie was a little wooden character, and he was in the forest scene, and he would turn Charlie's head. He went, "Oh, don't look now, son, the relatives are in." As though he's looking at all the trees, so your relatives are in. I don't know if that come across on the vent bit. But it was, it's so nice to ad lib. Sometimes you'd have the band or something in the orchestra and the characters can ad lib. As the ventriloquist or the comic, you probably, and the dame, I think the only people that can ad lib in Panto.
Go off the book, yeah.
Off book, which I was never off the book actually. I was learning my lines, but I always went off the book. I did do Panto with Craig Revel Horwood, and I think it was when after the Panto was over, he did say to me, he said a comment which made me think he wanted me to go more off the book and just do more cod. Do you know what I mean? Sort of have more laughter and. But I always thought, because he was directing, and Craig, the scary judge, he's a lovely person. But I thought, I had to stick to my lines, and so I didn't really go off the book.
You didn't want to cross him, no?
I didn't want to cross Craig Revel Horwood, no. But as lovely as he is, I respected him as director, and when he did direct me, my act, which I did get a 6-minute act, but it got cut down to 3 because they had to cut. The Panto was so long, so many dances in it, and so many songs. Sadly, it was my act that got cut first. So I had a 2 or 3 minute act in the end. So I didn't add stuff during the Panto when we'd done a lot of close up stuff together, with the puppet and with Craig, and I always try to make him laugh with the puppet's eyes and things. But I think in those moments, I think he really wanted me to push it further,
Did you ever make him corpse?
I think we did. I think we did once or twice. Yeah, but it's only. I don't remember specifics, but it's just sometimes I would scrunch up the puppet's face or move the eyes a different way. And I remember him corpsing once or twice then when the puppet would do something completely different, or its nose would touch his nose. Like Pongo the skunk, it would get really close to him and. He'd get freaked out by it, but I remember him laughing on stage once, and the whole audience laughed because Pongo was shaking or something, So it's, I just wish I was more. As I said, I was quite shy. I hid behind the puppets. I kind of still do it, but when I'm in Panto, I'm more disciplined in Panto than I am in my own shows, really, script-wise. I kind of stuck to it, and I thought that's what Craig wanted. But I think at the end of the Panto run, I think I can't remember the words he said, so I won't quote what I don't remember, but it was something along the lines of, let yourself go kind of thing, and I wish I did. But I'm still learning, back then I was still learning. That was only about 7-8 years ago, and up to now I've only done about 11 Pantos, which isn't that many, considering Keith Harris done 48 Pantos, and he produced a lot. Keith Harris was one of the greatest Panto stars I ever saw, one of the hardest working. He produced them, he wrote them, and when he performed in them, he worked so hard. He was on stage so much. But I loved watching Keith in Panto. He was a master at work.
Did you go and see Minnie as a child?
No. I remember seeing Rod Hull at Reading. I think I went with my school, so Rod and Imu and Lionel Blair was in that. That was brilliant. We didn't go to much local Pantos when I was a kid. We didn't have much money, sadly. My mum and dad had 4 kids to feed, so Panto is quite expensive, especially these days. We do take our kids once or twice. I've always got friends. I think you have to go and see. You have to see Biggins in Panto, and I know Max Fulham's were Biggins, and my mate Ricky J's in it, so I'm getting 3 for the price of 1 there. So we're definitely going to take the kids to see that in Bromley. This year, 2019, and but we go and see 1 or 2, and if it's someone we really want to see. So it's, but we do love Panto. It's something you have to take your kids to. I've got 2 daughters, and they love the princesses and all the scenery and the music and stuff. So we'll always take them to Panto. And we'll get that in their minds nice and early on. They have to go to the theatre. You should take your kids to the theatre. It's their first experience, isn't it? Panto. So. And then hopefully we'll let them take it on from there, and take their kids. So it's, but obviously my kids, they've been to America to see me work. They've been on cruise ships, Disney cruise ships, and they come to holiday parks. And so they get to they know what I do for a living. They're only 3 and 8, but they've grown up watching me work. So they know my characters. They live with the characters at home. They love Pongo. And sometimes I turn around and little Larissa is holding half a lager. And he's taller than her, she's dancing with him. And yes, I've got a little character called Chi-Chi now, a little dog called Chi-Chi, a little blue puppet. And she's always cuddling him, you know. So they got to know my act over the years through Panto, or I've only done one Panto when I've had kids though. So eventually, in the next couple of years, I'll be coming back to Panto.
Do you try material out on your own children?
I actually they write for me, so they say things to me. Well, that'll be good with Pongo, you know, that will work. And you know, if you're telling them off, or if they're really cheeky, they end up making me and my wife laugh quite a lot. And so I could put that in the show, you know.
What kind of things?
Well, just those little looks that they give you, you know. So, you know, did you eat that chocolate bar, you know, that you shouldn't have done? And then they're turning their head away, but they're looking at you with their eyes, and you know they've done it. So it's just things like that all work with characters, you know, with puppets. And so it's all visual. So I kind of turn that into material in the end. But I do try jokes on them, or if I ad-lib in the house and my wife and my children are laughing, I think, well, that will work in my family show, so I'm going to put that in the script. So, yeah, and every day we write stuff.
In your 11 years then in pantomime, you said to begin with you'd never acted, you didn't really dance, you never sang.
I can't act, I can't sing, and I can't dance.
So you're the triple non-threat.
Yes. Yeah, I don't scare anyone.
But how have you progressed in them 11 pantomimes?
I don't know. They're all different companies. I fool them every time. I kind of do 3 pantos, and I have a few years off. I do corporate gigs and Christmas shows. So in 2008, 9 and 10, I hosted, when I performed in a Christmas show in Thursford, the Christmas Spectacular. So I didn't need Panto at that time. And then 2014, I was asked to do an Easter Panto, so I'd done that with Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee, and that was brilliant. It was a touring Panto. She's done about 4 nights in 6 different towns, and working with Paul, another master, you know, and Debbie, they were just brilliant to work with. And we were next door in dressing rooms, so we'd banter a lot. He'd come in, show me a card trick, or usually do a cheeky joke that we couldn't tell on stage. And yeah, so working, you know, with a legend like that, and he was a legend of magic, because his TV show, you know, was where he would bring over all the ventriloquists. So Paul Daniels and John Fisher brought Ron Lucas over, Albert Savine, and you know, he gave them all these platforms at the BBC to, you know, so young ventriloquists could see it. And some of the greatest, Ron Lucas and Albert Savine, Fred Roby, a Swiss ventriloquist, some of their greatest spots were done on the Paul Daniels Magic Show, because he wanted the best. So John Fisher produced them, asked and said, would you do this and this? So they've put all of their best bits of their act in like 12 minutes, and Paul Daniels showcased it, you know. And even when I look back at them now, they're just masterpieces. And you always wanted to do the best spot on the Paul Daniels Magic Show, because it was a classy show to be on, you know. So when you was a special guest, it was quite important to get it right. So my time in Pantos, and every time I went back, it was for a different company. I played a different part, so I could put something new into it, you know, little something different, and use a new character as well. So after BGT, they wanted me to, it was Evolution Pantos, they wanted me to use the Simon Cowell puppet. So I remember actually they were auditioning Snow White for it. So I brought the Simon Cowell puppet in to judge and pick a Snow White, you know, with a lot of the producers. But that was, using the Simon Cowell puppet was fine for a while, I think, but the novelty kind of wore off. I think when he was in the audience and I brought out the Simon Cowell puppet, that was hilarious. And then a week later when I brought him out and then Sunita out, and they were both sat in front of me in the studio, that was brilliant. But out of that, you know, I did take them both on tour a following year, and using those characters, I had to up my game and kind of write material for them, and it went okay, but the Sunita character kind of didn't work outside that environment. So I just had to rewrite material, and she's been in my garage ever since, out of work, bless her. Not the real one. She's at home. So I really do think, actually, it's evident that I reinvented Sunita after that show, and after that happened, she was in the papers, and then she was just on TV not me, but she was on TV after I got that puppet out, because it was, it was quite a sensational little bit of TV. It was brilliant. So there's Simon and Sunita things. I used them in Panto just the once, but Arthur Lager kind of got his way in as well, where it was always used to be Ponga the Skunk in Panto. And then I introduced Chi-Chi, this little dog puppet, but I think Chi-Chi is too small. He's like sooty size, so I need to double the size of Chi-Chi, because I think when I go back to Panto, it will be me, Arthur Lager, and Chi-Chi, I think. Or Pongo and Chi-Chi, I think you need a cheeky character and a cute character, and Chi-Chi's quite cute. So you need someone to be like Orville, that the kids adore, and you need a cheeky one that they could laugh at when they're not supposed to be laughing, but the parents are laughing as well, kind of over their heads, So Chi-Chi's just the cutesy one, and Pongo's the cheeky one. Arthur Lager he can reach the whole family. I use him on Disney ships, and it goes down well on Saga ships, so he can do any age.
Everybody knows an old man, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. That's the connection. And when it's like a stand-up comedian like Lee Evans to talk about everyday life, and we relate to that. So if you can relate to the comedy, like everyone's got a granddad, or old lady's got a husband that looks like Arthur. It just works, It works on cruise ships. It works in holiday parks. And so it's, if you can relate to your audience and involve the audience as well. So that's good fun.
Where do you get the voices from then? Do they take a lot of work to try and craft
They
the voice?
do. I'm not too disciplined at voices either. But there is, every time I get a new character, you have to work on it in the mirror. And I've got Pongo is hello Stinkies, I'm Pongo. Nice to see you. How are you? And then Chi-Chi. Hi, Chi-Chi. My name's Chi-Chi. How are you? Almost like Orville. And then Arthur Lager is, the old man voice. But with the Chi-Chi, I couldn't have a girl character in my act, because my falsetto only sounds the same. It all sounds the same, I'm a guy, so I don't know how I do 2 or 3 different falsettos, for a girl. So you really use one female character in the show. I got Dave the horse, and he's hello, I'm Dave. You're all right. He's a little bit dopey, that one. He's a little So you can work on different voices when you get the new characters. I got a brand new Ken Dodd dummy made up, and I performed at Ken's 90th birthday before we lost him, and that was down in London. It was a remote control Ken Dodd puppet. So I would come out and I would say, I'd love to have a Ken Dodd puppet, but I can't have a dummy that's going to be on the stage 4 hours after I've left the building. I'll be home and my dummy would still be performing. That got a laugh, and then I do like 5 minutes in my spot. This is actually at his 90th birthday. And then behind me there's something covered in a cloth. So I say goodnight and get a round of applause, but then Happiness starts playing, Ken Dodd. And then I rip off this big cloth, and it's actually a Ken Dodd full-size, not a full-size Ken Dodd puppet, but Dickie Mint size, And then he starts singing Happiness, waving a tickle stick around. But I've left the stage, so the Ken Dodd dummy does actually start working, and I've gone. That was my joke. I don't know if it come across, but it was quite novel. The Ken Dodd. Peter Pullen, who makes all my characters, he synced the voice with the track, so it was actually Ken Dodd singing, but it was just a nice little finale piece, which I put in my summer season in Blackpool the following year.
Did Ken like it?
I think he was a bit freaked out by the way it looked, because he really accentuated the teeth. Peter Pullen did, and we have got a picture of me and Peter Pullen and Ken with the dummy. I remember him saying to Peter Pullen, he said, "Did you do this? Not did you make this? Did you do this?" So I think it was like, "Did you make me look this way?" I don't know if he's entirely happy, but it was a lovely novelty piece that the audience were. Ian was there actually. He was, it was quite a nice bit because it was his birthday. Excuse me. It was the most expensive thing I've ever had made, but because it was Ken's birthday, I said to Roy Hard, who put the show together, I said, I've got this idea of actually doing this Ken Dodd puppet, and then at the end of my act, it'd be on its own singing Happiness. And Roy said, yeah, go for it. And I'm glad they didn't pull me out the day before, because I'd spent £5,000 on this character. And so it was insured for 10 because it's all the animatronics and things. But I've since had it made now. The animatronics are now taken out. So I'm working on the Ken Dodd puppet to be a tribute to Ken Dodd, So that's going to be like an 8-minute routine I'm going to do in the future to pay tribute to Ken. And it may be a mix of Ken's material and Dickie Mint, which is a brilliant routine. And it's a shame that it stopped, He was a genius, Ken. I taught with him for 3 years and he was just a brilliant boss, Really fun boss to work for.
Did he teach you much? Did he teach you much?
Watching him every night, you'd learn from Ken. I mean, when I was on stage, I always see this shadow in the corner, and I'd turn around quickly, and Ken would be standing there. And you'd be honoured that Ken Dodd was watching you work, because he'd watched all the great ventriloquists before me, all of them, Dennis Spicer, Arthur Worsley, Keith Harris, all these vents worked with Ken Dodd. And you'd learn by watching Ken's delivery. You'd watch. He would have all the jokes written on the back of his hands, and so I always had notes written everywhere. If I was doing new material, they were there to remind me to do them in the right order. And so, I didn't learn by that because I already did it, but. It was, just learning by his timing and how he would do a song, and then he'd do a routine, then he'd do gag, and how to structure a routine. And if you missed the first hour and a half of the first half, I would do a half hour, then there's another hour and a half coming before the interval. so you if you missed something else was coming along. I would always wait before I drove home. After the gig, I'd always wait till Dickie Mint had been on before I go home, because his cod vent routine with that was just one of the funniest. Brilliant routine.
How did Britain's Got Talent come about then?
Britain's Got Talent started, I can't remember when it started, 2007, possibly. There was this thing called Paul O'Grady's Got Talent, which I auditioned for. And I got some really good laughs. There was only 3 producers in watching, but I made them laugh, and they said, we'll be in touch. And then a few months later, it was like Paul O'Grady now has moved to Channel 4, so the O'Grady's Got Talent wasn't going to go ahead anymore. But Simon Cowell had bought the idea, so Simon Cowell had Britain's Got Talent. Then I thought, I'm not going to go for this, because we saw the first season, and it just didn't seem to be a show, because I was doing okay where I was. I was doing Panto's cruise ships, and all the work I was doing, I was kind of working my way up. So I thought, I don't know if this is the show for me. And then the following year, they called me to do the show, but I was already booked out, so I couldn't do it. Then I had phone calls for the next 6 years. I turned it down because I was already working. And it was 2013. I had a call in January after Panto had finished. I'd just done the Craig Revel Hall with Panto for Kudos, and had a wonderful time with Craig and Anne Widdecombe. It was brilliant in High Wycombe. And literally, I had like 3 weeks off. Normally, I do loads of cruise ships, but I had like 3 weeks off. BGT called and said, we're at the Palladium next week. Are you available? There's a slot for you. I said, it's not really my thing to come on this show. I love watching it, but I'm not going to do it. And they said, well, there is a spot for you. It's at the Palladium. I said, if you're available, then just turn up. So I did. I turned up because I felt it was kind of a right time. I've been doing Pantos cruise ships, holiday parks for like 15 years, and I thought, I've not actually had a break on TV, so this could be something good for me, step up the ladder. So I did it, got a standing ovation from the whole audience, and the judges loved it. I'd done about 6 minutes that night at the Palladium, and when it went on air, they showed 20 seconds, I think, in the end. And so I thought I wouldn't hear from them again, and then I got through to the live shows, and so I thought everyone was saying, well, you're on the live shows, so save the best stuff till then, So I went to do the live show. I didn't tell the producers I had the Simon Cowell dummy made up. It was my wife's idea. So I thought, we'll just keep this as an ace up my sleeve, or something on my sleeve. And so I kept him in the box, and I I rehearsed my spot. And I ad-libbed a lot on that spot, because you really have to vet all of your material through the BGT producers. They have to know exactly what you're doing. So although I did do what I'd rehearsed, I ad-libbed as well about stuff that happened earlier in the week on BGT, and they loved it. They said, have you got any more stuff you can do tomorrow? I said, yeah. They said, have you got any ad-libs? Just put them in. They liked the fact that I was doing it. So I thought, that's nice. So, and it was all new material that I was writing for the show. So on the night of my semi-final, I done the last rehearsal just before it went live, and it was with Ant and Dec. They were still in the jeans, and then I pulled out the Simon Cowell puppet in that very last rehearsal after my spot, and the whole place erupted in laughter. The producers ran down and said, do that tonight. So, and if you look at YouTube, you see what happened. I pulled out the Simon Cowell puppet, and because he was sat there, it was just, the reaction was the best in the studio. It was incredible. And then I was out that night. I got to the top 3, and then I was voted out. Simon chose the singer over me. Same old story. And then I went home the next day. I had a phone call, and they said, oh, you might be the wild card. I said, well, how will I know? They said, on Wednesday you'll be told. They said, can you get another puppet made up of one of the judges? And I said, I don't know if that would work. I think, well, what about Sunita? And they called back a minute later and said, Sunita's the one, we want Sunita. So on Wednesday, they came round with TV cameras and said, we've got about 8 wild cards, and we're filming all of them today, which they weren't in hindsight, and it was just me because I was the one that got the wild card. So I got wild card, and I had 3 days to get a brand new Sunita puppet made up. Called Peter Pullen. He didn't sleep for 3 days, and he met me at the studios in Wembley, and he brought the Sunita puppet, and I rehearsed with it that afternoon, an hour later. And I remember a week before, when I rehearsed with the Simon Cowell puppet, it got a really, really great reaction. But this time round with the Simon and Sunita, it just wasn't getting the reaction I wanted it to. So I thought, it might not work tonight. I was quite disappointed. But anyway, I was revealed as the wild card, went on live on a Saturday night once again. Please welcome Steve Hewlett. I came out and I wrote some new material, which went down great. I brought out Simon Cowell, and again the reaction was just as good as it was the night before with the studio audience, because he was now dressed in like his Barbados outfit. and after I'd done a few gags with him, Sunita started heckling, and I brought her out. I think the fact is, because she was sat in the audience and I had a Sunita puppet, that's why it worked, because the cameras were on her and Simon, and then they came back to me, and then I just finished. My wife taught me this little song from Greece, and so we done that as the finale, and it was just incredible. When I walked off that stage, it was the best atmosphere. I felt like a winner. And I thought, I could win this. This is incredible. And I came 4th in the end. But it was just after me, there was a young girl that threw some eggs at Simon Cowell.
Yes.
And she became the winner of the night. She was in all the papers the next day. So she basically won the show. And then and the rest is history, So so they asked me to do the show in the end, and it notched me up on that ladder, So I got You know, I got Panto with Evolution just after that, and then I just started doing corporate gigs, you know, every Christmas. So I've not done Panto now for 3 or 4 years. So
you were available.
So I was available, yeah, for quite a while. And I had this phone call in 2016. It was for Jimmy Osmond's tour. He was doing a Christmas show, the Osmonds Christmas Spectacular, and they asked me if I would tour with them in the UK, and I said, yeah, I'd love to. And then they said, Jimmy Osmond would love to speak to you about doing some work in America as well. So after this, before this tour starts, you'd come out to America for 6 weeks and do the Moon River Theatre, the Andy Williams Theatre in Branson. So I said, at the moment I am available, and I'd love to do that. And I got the job, so I went to America, worked with Jimmy and his brothers, and it was just the most incredible Christmas show. An amazing show I've been involved with, you know, so, and all these American audiences. So I'd done 6 weeks there, then we went on, done about four US dates, and then we all flew to the UK and done 12 UK dates around Christmas 2016. In 2017 I went back to Branson and done 7 weeks out there, and then I done a week in Canada with Jimmy Osmond, and that was just incredible. Jimmy was the most amazing host, and I know he was incredible in Panto as well. And sadly, we know what happened in Birmingham. He was just the most incredible host, and became a really good friend, and really looked after me in America. And when I heard what happened to him, I was just, we were just all devastated. We're still devastated because we don't really know the extent of the outcome, you know, of his stroke. But he worked so hard. He was a workaholic, I believe, Jimmy, but he's just the most incredible performer, producer, director. He's just brilliant. He knew variety. He knows variety so well that he knew how to put a variety show on and produce it perfectly, you know. And those shows in America, and just seeing him in Panto over here as well was just brilliant. And on MasterChef, you know, it was great. He gave me he asked me to keep it to myself, but he gave me his chicken pot pie that he made on MasterChef, and I've made that 3 or 4 times at home. It goes down very well. Yeah, Jimmy's just brilliant, and, you know, great Panto star. And he was on stage when he had his stroke in Panto. So it's, Panto was his last performance, sadly. So I hope he gets better, you know, we really do. We're all praying for him. He's a good man.
How did American audiences take to you, and how do you find them different to UK audiences?
After the first night, Jimmy said to me, they loved it. Can you just slow down? Because I'm quite a fast performer, you know, my dummies talk quite fast, and so the next night I went out and I slowed down. And he went, that was great. And so, you know, as long as I can talk slower and the characters can deliver their lines a bit better, you know, then I'm just thinking now, have I been talking too fast the last hour?
Enunciate,
yeah. Enunciate, yeah. I think that was his lesson to me, just enunciate and just be careful with the words that you use, you know. So I did. I went away the next day and I thought, okay, I'll just go through my lines and make sure that I'm enunciating and pronouncing everything that should be correct in English, and slightly slower so they can understand what I'm saying, you know. The audiences were fantastic. They loved it. I went out at the end, you know, go out and greet them like Jimmy Wood and Charlie Green, great young singer, and we go out there and meet the audiences, and they were over the moon, you know. They just loved. The first thing they'd say, well, we love your accent, you know, your accent's amazing, we love that, you know. And then they'd just say, so funny, you know, never seen anything like it. But Jimmy has always worked with ventriloquists as well. There's great ventriloquists in Branson, and he'd worked with Shari Lewis, he'd worked with Ron Lucas. They all knew Jimmy, you know, because he's been around variety his whole life since he was 3 years old. So anyone that worked on the Andy Williams show, Jimmy Osmond knows them. And that's pretty much all the ventriloquists that I admired in America. And, you know, so he told me some great stories. So it's I'm just very lucky to have had that experience with Jimmy, and his brothers in the States. It was fantastic. So I remember getting on the coach in 2016. Thought, I'm going to go on a tour coach with the Osmonds. And this is a big boy group, that used to go on the coach and get chased by thousands of fans, screaming fans, and we're going to have a rock and roll lifestyle. And I got 6 weeks of this. It's going to be amazing. Well, we'd done Branson, and then we had 4 or 5 days on a coach with the Osmonds. So when we got on there, I thought, I'm going on tour with them.
And was it rock and roll?
And they was asleep within half hour. It was snowing. Everyone was exhausted from the last 6 weeks of Branson. We were just tired. We just finished the show. And I just looked around, and I did laugh to myself. I thought, this would have been better 30 years ago. I don't
think it would have been that rock and roll, though, to be fair.
Well, no, obviously. There's no drinking going on, but it's just the experience of how massive the Osmonds were. I learned a lot, being out there, and I appreciated the time I was having with Jimmy, Meryl and Jay. They are beautiful people, really lovely people, and they showed me Branson. They really looked after me out there. I got to meet all their families as well, so that just being part of the Osmonds family for a while was truly a blessing, and I love family. I met a few of their brothers out there. They come to see the show, and just totally respect Jimmy for his hard work. He put so much into it. I remember finishing those 4 dates that we done after Branson finished. We flew to London. The day we landed in London, I had to drive home and get some new characters. And then I drove to the Isle of Wight ferry. We went on that night on the Isle of Wight. And then after the Isle of Wight, we had to be somewhere. Literally, the tour went on for 12 nights. So we didn't get a night off. So, and I was, it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago we'd done that. So I was 41. And then the Osmond brothers, were in their 60s, and Jimmy was in his mid-50s. So, it must have been hard on those guys, because they literally flew in and went straight on the stage. So they're passionate about their work, I know, but they didn't really get a break. And I imagine it's been like that most of their life, in the Osmonds. But Jimmy just worked really hard. He really did. It's just sad, consequences that has happened since. I just hope he recovers. It's very sad.
What's next then for yourself in terms of characters, in terms of long-term performing? You said as well earlier that you're writing a book at the moment.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about ventriloquism, so it's very important, to find out what's going on right now. So I've been to a ventriloquist convention, and it's still thriving over in America. But I've interviewed ventriloquists all over the world, in South Africa, Australia, Kuwait, India, China, and England, Iceland, literally Finland. There's ventriloquists all over the world. And you wouldn't think it, but the art of ventriloquism has blossomed. And I think the Got Talent title, Britain's Got Talent, Asia's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, it literally is all over the world. They have given ventriloquists another platform, and it's come back. You've got Terry Fater, Darcy Lynn, Paul Zerdin. Those 3 ventriloquists won America's Got Talent. I came 4th over here, so I guess I just auditioned in the wrong country. And so, but they've given us a platform, and ventriloquists, excuse the pun, have been given a voice again, or voices. And so it really has upped ventriloquism to a new level. And it's just brilliant. Jeff Dunham is doing great for ventriloquists. He's the richest ventriloquist in the world, not just in finances, but in his delivery, in his act, in what he has given the ventriloquist community. He's inspired so many of us. And he was inspired by Edgar Bergen, the ventriloquist on the radio before him. So we're all inspired by someone. Like Max Fulham was inspired by ventriloquists, and it happens. I hope there's more like Max, you know, that will come along, because it would be sad if it did die out. It's very important to be innovative. You know, did I say that right? Innovative?
Yeah.
Yep. Come up with new stuff, originality. It's not easy because a lot of it's been done before. But if you can reinvent, you know, and come up with new routines. So I do a lot of sort of throwaway gags. I write jokes mainly based around ventriloquism. Some come up with characters in the future that reflect that, which is just everyday stuff, you know. When I talk about being in the post office and things, and so if you can put humour into your routine before you get the characters out, which is what I do a lot now. I've got a character called Rod Vegas who plays the guitar, and he's on tour. So he talks about being on tour and playing different songs, and we're just at the moment writing him loads of guitar work for an electric guitar. Where at the moment he's on acoustic guitar. So now he's going to be moving up to the electric guitar, which is a whole brand new act for me, which I've not learnt yet. But I've got a very good friend, Kevin Dean, who's a brother water rat, and he's writing me that piece right now. So that is a very visual dummy, you know, because he plays the guitar and he sings, and I can't sing, but my characters sound better than I do when they sing. So I sing mainly through them. I've got this Ken Dodd puppet, so I've got a lot more new characters coming. I'm writing more than I ever done before, and I'm writing a book as well. I feel like I've been writing this book for over 30 years since I started learning, because all the letters I got from Terry Hall, Lenny the Lion, Terry Rogers, Peter Bruff wrote me letters. They're all going in the book. All my experiences of knowing ventriloquists, knowing Keith Harris and Ron Lucas, they're all going to be in the book, and it's going to be kind of my life really over the last 30 years. But it's me and Arthur Lager are writing this book together. So he banters with me when I'm saying something about something. He'll knock me down, you know, and like he does in the act. So I'm trying to make that kind of a bit more fun as well. But there's so many pictures I want to put into this book. I don't know if the publishers are going to allow it, or how much it's going to cost me, because it's I've been given so much from the vent community. I've interviewed everybody from Nina Conti to Jeff Dunham, Terry Fater, and like I said, the ventriloquists all over the world. So this book is my life's work. This is probably the best thing I've ever done, and I'm enjoying writing it every day. To me, it's my masterpiece. If Steve Hewlett does anything, BGT was good, but to me, the book is the best thing I've ever done, and I hope, you know, that I can better the book one day as well, and do some more future performances that are going to be talked about, because a lot of people just talk about what I've done on BGT, where I've done better things since. It just hasn't been seen. You know, so I'm writing new routines, new characters, and I'm hoping to go to Edinburgh Festival with my Arthur Lager show. So I think it's going to be called Arthur Lager Get Real, or Gets Real. It's quite early stages, so it's all about Arthur Lager and his life. So he's a baby, then he's a toddler, then he's a teenager, then he grows up. But literally every stage of those years is a new puppet. But I do all that show in 1 hour, so it's going to be like a 1 hour special. So I'm writing Arthur Lager's life story at the moment to go on stage, which will be in my theatre show hopefully next year, 2020. So start a new decade with a new show.
Who then would you say has been the most influential on your life?
On my life? Ventriloquist-wise,
yeah.
Okay, right. Because I had my children come up, I had my wife come up. My wife Nina is so supportive. She vets my material. She helps me rewrite it when it's not funny. She writes me material all the time, you know. So Nina is very influential in my life. But out of the ventriloquists, Jimmy Tamley, who first taught me, he has always been there. We're godfathers to each other's children. We're that close. A couple of weeks ago, he called me on the phone, and it was a WhatsApp call, I hope, because it was a 3-hour, 45-minute phone call. We were just got chatting one day, and we didn't realise until I looked down at my phone. I was in a hotel, and I realised, I said, Jim, we've been talking for 3.5 hours. He says, oh, we better wrap this up. It was another 15 minutes, and then we wrapped it up, because it would take 15 minutes to say goodbye. And then you just, it's so nice to have a friend like that, because we both talk about the same thing. Talk about, our next routine, or a new joke that's, that we've both written, or... So we've helped each other out for years, whereas he obviously helped me out when I started. And I've helped him write gags, and we get together like once a year in a hotel and just laugh, and we'd talk and we'd write stuff together. And he's still influencing me now. He's as a father. I watched him and his kid. He's got 5 children. I watched them grow up and watched him be a dad. He's a fantastic dad. He's a brilliant mate. He's just kind-hearted and a brilliant guy. Great ventriloquist, just a great person to be around. He's very funny, on stage, and even funnier off stage. So Jimmy and as I say, Keith Harris and Ron Lucas are huge influences, huge. So I wouldn't be where I am without those 3. They've been really good to me.
We were talking off of the recording earlier on about you were inducted into the membership of the Water Rats.
Yes.
A great charitable organisation, and also fraternity of entertainers.
Yeah, brilliant entertainers.
Who put you forward for that then?
That was Roy Hudd. I'd done Lead City Varieties with Roy Hudd, and I'd done a few shows with him, but on this occasion he said, oh, you need to be a water rat. He said, you should be in the Rats. And so I said, I'd love to be. And a few water rats had said that in the past. Adja Brown, who I've known for 30 years, he's a great comedian. He said I should be in. Then Andrew Van Buren, who the world of magic and circus, and just all these now brother water rats that said that they'd love me to be in, and they all put me forward. And so Roy Hudd actually put me forward in Lodge, and then Roger de Courcy seconded me, which for another ventriloquist to agree for me to come in was amazing. And King Rat, that year I came in at the end of July 2014. King Rat was Rick Wakeman, and Rick was just brilliant. They accepted me, and I think it was like 49 water rats were there that night when I was initiated. And you just look around that room, and it's daunting, but you look around, and now I sit in there 5 years later, and I still look around the room in this same light, just thinking, wow. And you look at all the artists that are around the walls on the pictures, and you've got Les Dawson, Tommy Cooper, Charlie Chester, all of these great comedians and ventriloquists and actors, David Lodge and Lauren Hardy, Charlie Chaplin. They were all in this room being initiated, and it's, I don't take it for granted. I really respect the fact that I've been invited, and I try and give back as much as I can, and they tell me I'm doing a good job as a water rat. It's nice to hear that now and again. And yes, so it's nice to be recognised, by your peers. It's really nice to be recognised by people you've respected and watched on TV. You look left, you see someone from The Bill that you grew up watching, and you look right, someone from EastEnders. And then you got one of your favourite comedians sat across you, and you got Jess Conrad is telling his stories, and then Fraser Hines from Emmerdale was sat there. Just all of these names become your brothers, but we just become friends. I instantly just had at least 100 brand new friends that night I was initiated. It's great to bring showbiz together like that, and I think they're in need of young blood in the water rats as well. Sadly, we lost 3 in the last 4 weeks, which is very sad news for show business, but for the water rats as well to lose so many. It was very, very sad. So with new water rats coming, Ian Freeman was our last. He's our baby rat now, so he was the last one to come in. I was there when Neil Morrissey come in, and Duncan Norvell and Andy Eastwood, all these great acts all do different things, but they're respected in the business, and they do become your brothers. You really care about them. Excuse me, it's quite emotional, isn't it? But it is such a fun thing to go into the lodge like every 3 weeks if you're available, and it's just funny, just to sit there, and because we banter a lot, and we just have a really good laugh, and we reminisce a lot as well, and if we do lose a brother rat, then we do talk about them fondly in lodge, and everyone's got a story, because we all know each other. I've known them for a lot of rats for 20 years because I've been on the circuit for so long now, but when I joined, I kind of knew a lot of them already, not just from the TV, but we'd done a variety bill together, or I'd done something, so I read their biography, but, so it's great to be part of that order. Really nice, and we do raise a lot of money for different charities, and so I'm doing something next week up in Doncaster. There's an afternoon variety show, and there's a lot of water rats on the bill. We're performing a show. I think it's about 1:30 in the afternoon. So I'm going up the night before. Actually, it's next Tuesday, so I'm going up Monday. It's nearly sold out. It's doing really well. So, and all the funds there. Mark Andrews has produced that, and he's put all the funds will go towards the rats, and then the rats will hand it all out, to their charities. So it's nice working for a good cause,
Do you feel like now you're holding the mantle, kind of, for ventriloquism in the variety sense?
There is some great vents out there. There's Nina Conti and Paul Zerdin, Jimmy Tamley. There's not many of us, but I'm hopefully holding part of the mantle. It's important to keep it going and keep it fresh as well. If you keep knocking out the same stuff, I just think people will get bored with it. But I think it's good if you can rewrite it, and make it funnier and more visual, and keep ventriloquism alive. That's one of my things, So I want to talk. My book is not about. I call it Ventriloquist because I'm actually. I'm not talking about how to do it. I'm not telling you really the history. I'm talking about the people behind the dummy. So I'm teaching you about ventriloquists and what it's like to be a ventriloquist, and it's teaching you about our lives really, and it's quite nice to learn about the ventriloquists that were around, that paved the way for younger ventriloquists like myself. And then I've interviewed Max Fulham for the books. It's nice to get a young perspective on it as well. Yes, it's.
We touched earlier on Keith Harris as well. You said you saw him perform when you were a child. I saw him when I was a child performing. Do you think kind of ventriloquism hit its peak then with them characters that he had?
Well, Orville and Cuddles were great, but in the 80s when he had that that hit with Orville, that's what skyrocketed him really on top of the pops, and then he was just huge. His TV shows where he done the black and white minstrel shows he done in the 80s, and that was. I read something recently where he used about 600 characters on his TV shows. He literally had them all made every week. He'd do something different. So even I didn't know it was to that extent that Keith was so, creative back then. He'd done so much on TV. But those characters were the ones you remember. I think people my age and your age will remember Orville growing up. And you just ask someone about a ventriloquist now, they would talk about Jeff Dunham, who's like massive on YouTube, and so or they might remember me. Some of them on Britain's Got Talent. YouTube is a wonderful platform really for any artist, musically or comedy wise, as that's where a lot of their videos are, But the Got Talent, if you want to see some ventriloquist win Sweden's Got Talent, just go on YouTube and you can see her act. It's become really quite important, really, YouTube, to actually showcase ventriloquists around the world. And there's so many videos out there of even young kids learning. So they've got the bug like I did in '87, just by watching ventriloquists. I see kids in my audiences in theatres sat there with puppets in the front row because they want to learn. And so at the end of the show, ask them questions and say, if you want to learn, then just email me, and then it will just go on from there. And so if they keep that bug, a lot of them just drop it a year later. But if they keep it, like people like Max Fulham, they will go on and make something really good of it, and technology is changing things these days as well, isn't it? So characters that are remembered, like Orville and Lord Charles, Ray Allen, Nookie Bear. Sadly, those characters are not around anymore, but you've got Paul Zerdin, Sam. I'm trying to think of the ones that stand out. It's Arthur Lager. It's going towards the digital age, I guess. So I'm already thinking about holograms. I'm thinking about using things in computers. And about 8 years ago, I used a dancing dummy where my dummy would stand in front of a screen, and the legs were digitalized, so it looked like he was dancing. I just moved the top of him. He was called Jackson J, and he was a pop star. And so he would, I pre-recorded someone's legs, so it looked like he was dancing. And effectively, that did look great. So what I'm trying to do is to move into the new,
digital age.
The digital age, which is what people do want to see. But it's just complicated to go in and do that in a holiday park or on a cruise ship. I can't take all that contraption with me, so you've got to go and do your hour that excuse me, but if you're doing a theatre tour, then you could do whatever you want, really, and you could use screens or you could use holograms, but that all takes money as well, so you need money to feed the kids.
Then again, the purist is just somebody with their hand in a puppet and you actually believe that puppet's real.
Yeah, that is what I do. That's what it boils down to, really. And I think I don't see it as cheating. Like David Strassman does the remote control dummies and walks off, brings them to life, and Paul Zerdin does that, and Keith Harris used to do it as well when Orville would come to life at the end of the Panto. I think if you all do that too much, then obviously ventriloquists will be out of work. It would just be a puppet on stage entertaining, and robots are taking over, so I don't think I should put too much of that into my act. But I think it's important to keep the essence of a ventriloquist, which is ventriloquist with different characters, and like what Jeff Dunham's doing. He's the highest paid ventriloquist in the world. He's a multi-millionaire, and there's no reason why I couldn't do what he's doing with a vineyard in his garden.
But has he done Panto?
No, he's never done Panto. So I've got one up on Jeff.
There you go.
11 times. But he's definitely paved the way for more ideas. He's done it with Ahmed, the dead terrorist. So he's gone controversial. But on YouTube, that's when he went viral, which is incredible.
Going back to Panto then, do you like the school matinee performances?
No one does.
Some do.
Are you talking about the 10 o'clock ones?
Oh no, not the 10 o'clock ones. Far too early in the morning for anybody.
Well, if we can cancel the 10 o'clock ones, I don't. Yeah, they're completely different to the evening Panto. So the matinees where the kids are just screaming, I think all of the artists kind of take a step back and think, oh my God, I wasn't expecting that. Because we either come out of a matinee going, oh, we've got a headache, or we come out going, I really enjoyed that. That was different to what we're going to do tonight. Because they're screaming over everything. It's like a Beatles concert or One Direction, whoever it is these days, and the Osmonds. And it's like they're screaming because there's someone behind you or there's something that shouldn't be happening. But they change the dynamics of a pantomime, the children's matinees, don't they? Because they're just school kids and they just want to enjoy it. I've gone into schools and done a show, and I've had a brilliant time just doing my half-hour. I didn't do a kids show. I did like a family show. But when I do it in the school, you don't do half your material because they're laughing for 5 minutes after one gag, or after one puppet just says something or says, I fancy the teacher. The kids are laughing for 3 minutes. So I love the school matinees. Not the 10 o'clock ones, but the when it's just full of schools. It's quite magical, really, because you remember. I was quite young when I went to see Rod Hull in Panto, and you kind of do remember your first theatre experience. And I think it's very important to keep the kids coming, to see those shows. And as I say, they are different from the evening performances because you can do your scripts then. And then when you got like 800 kids coming in the next day, you think, oh, I won't have to do that line tomorrow because they won't hear it. But it's really nice to have the kids sing, because really it's for the kids, in it, Panto, unless you go to the Palladium. That's changed, hasn't it?
Just a bit.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of Panto. It's bigger than ever now. It's huge. Sorry, no, I was just going to say I will come back to Panto, but I'm hosting the Thursford Christmas Spectacular I done 9 years ago. I'm hosting it this year, so next year I am open to offers, for Panto, but I think I've already got some gigs coming in for some corporates and things. So it's I will go back because I just love working with people. It's really nice working with other artists, and the atmosphere at Panto is just brilliant. It's hard work, but it's really good fun.
Need the break as well from the family sometimes.
No, I miss them like crazy. Actually, I'm going away for 7 weeks in a couple of weeks to do this Christmas show, and it literally is every day. The show is every day for 7 weeks. They'll come up weekends, so I won't see them at all in the week because they've got school. They'll come up for the last 4 days of the show before Christmas, and I finish on Christmas Eve with this show, which is nice. Whereas Panto, you're back in Boxing Day. So I got a week off after Christmas, which is nice. And this is a nice big variety show. There's 120 in the cast, singers and dancers, and
wow.
I'm hosting, so there's 2 variety acts that I'll introduce, 50 musicians, 50 singers, and 20 dancers. So like 123 in the show. I think that's why they don't give out comps, because of the amount of people in the show. But we get through at least 2,500 people a day in that venue for 7 weeks, and it's brilliant fun. I can't wait to host that this year. But I do miss Panto. I miss not being in it. So I'll see a couple this year. And every time you sit down as an artist and you've done Panto and you sit down, you haven't done it for a few years, you go, I really wish that was me behind that curtain. When the music starts and the orchestra start playing.
The buzz.
And you get that buzz, and you miss that buzz in Panto. I've only done 11. It's not as many as I'd like to have done. But I've always been busy at Christmas. I think if there isn't Panto, there's always something else, hopefully, that will come along. There's not many Christmas shows now. I've done the Chroma Christmas show. I've done the Thursford Christmas show. I've done the Andy Williams Spectacular in America. And so Panto really is the only other option. But it's a good option. It's one I think that all of us should do, Yeah, it's brilliant.
This leads me then to my very last question. Your dream pantomime. You can either be in it, you could be sitting in the stalls watching it, you can choose the cast, alive or dead, you can choose the production, you could even write it if you wanted to.
When do I start? I'd love to write a panto. I thought we were doing a one-man panto where all the characters were my dummies, so that's an option, but a lot of work. Yeah, I would love to have seen Charlie Chaplin in Panto. That would have been nice. I don't think he ever did Panto, no, but he certainly worked the music halls years ago. But I'd love to have seen Les Dawson. I nearly had a chance to see Les, but when I was a teenager, all I did was get trains to go and meet people at stage doors and ask them if they would help me get onto the stage, So, and I saw a lot of pantos that way, but I'd love to have seen Les Dawson, Tommy Cooper, people like that in panto, and Arthur Askey. They all done panto, didn't they? And Charlie Chester. I'd love to have seen more of the greats in panto. I never really got a chance to do that. Rod Hull, I think, was the only one I got to see. So I'm pleased I'm going to see Biggins this year. He's one I think everyone should go and see. Yeah, well, but, Aladdin is the panto I've done the most, and I think Aladdin is my favourite panto. I do love that. So I like to see Aladdin, and can I just cast it?
You cast it completely.
I'm going to cast it now. So Aladdin is on. The genie, I think the genie, I would make Lee Evans. I think it'd be a good genie. I think, who else is in Aladdin? So I think Peter Andre would probably be Aladdin. I'm just making it up now. And then, Mila Kunis, I think, would be the Princess Jasmine. Should be good, wouldn't she?
She would.
You know where I'm going. And then Abanaza. Oh, so think of a really bad.
You must work with some bad people over the years. Not bad like that, but bad.
I've worked with some that
Villains.
deserve to be locked away in trunks. I'm just trying to think of a bad villain. I would love Roger Lloyd Pack back. Roger Trigger from Fools and Horses. Yeah, I saw him in a play once. He was fantastic. And he'd be a good baddie. I'm sure he's probably done Panto. Has Roger done Panto?
I don't think he did, to be
No.
fair.
Well, he is in my cast, so that's it. He's on that show.
But a brilliant actor as well, wasn't
Yes.
he? Not just this dopey
He
road
was a
sweeper.
brilliant actor, and he had a fascination for ventriloquist dolls because he came to see me on Chroma Pier when I was working Archie Andrews.
Did he?
Yeah, I took Archie back. We were doing a radio themed show in Chroma summer season, and he wanted to meet Archie Andrews, so he came back in the interval. And lovely guy. He had a very distinguished beard and a hat, very incognito, but he came back and he just wanted to meet Archie because Archie was mega famous in the 50s. And I was actually working with the original doll that Peter Bruff used to use. So, so Roger Lloyd Pack would be my baddie. I think Lee Evans would be Aladdin, did I say? And the comic as well.
Lee Evans was going to be
Oh,
the genie.
the genie. Sorry,
Yes.
no, the genie. Because you don't really... Do you get a genie in Panto? I don't think you do. Right? You do.
Genie, yeah.
Slave of the Ring. Or was that
Ring.
different? Yeah. Yeah,
Slave of the Ring.
Oh, yeah, Peter Andre's Aladdin. This casting's not going so well.
Well, let's choose the venue.
Oh, the venue. Well, I automatically would say the Palladium, but it's being done, so I think I need to come up. I would do it at the Royal Albert Hall.
Ooh, in the round.
In the Round, yeah, or the Roundhouse. That was a nice venue. I done that a few weeks ago, the Roundhouse, with Craig David. And you know what? I was paid within 7 days, so I was happy.
Oh,
That's a gag I done on the night, and they didn't get it till I explained it. So, yeah, I was hoping he laughed in the dressing room, but I don't know. Yeah, so no, the Roundhouse is quite a nice room. Actually, not as big as the Albert Hall, so I think it would carry for a panto. It'd be quite nice.
have you played Albert Hall?
Yes, 2016 I toured with Kenny G, and I love the saxophone. So I toured with him for 2 nights, Manchester, Birmingham, and we ended up at the London Royal Albert Hall, and it was one of my prized possessions is that picture of me on stage there, so which my wife took. And I went down to watch after, I'd done the first half hour, and then he'd done like an hour and a half. I went and watched that, which is nice, and he gave me a lovely plug afterwards as well on stage, which is nice to hear my name being called on the Albert Hall. Yeah, and so it's kind of strange for a ventriloquist to be playing places like that. I never thought I worked the Albert Hall when I was that 12-year-old boy watching a ventriloquist in 1987. Thinking, I just thought I'd do holiday parks, because I thought that's what they do. And then I ended up working in America and the Albert Hall and supporting Craig David. It's crazy. And the Osmonds, sleeping with the Osmonds on a coach. So it was just being a ventriloquist. Pantomime is a big part of being a ventriloquist or a variety artist, and I love the fact that I can go back to Panto when I want to, if they'll have me. But I do remember when I think I was doing the Osmonds show, I had to turn down 7 pantomimes, 7 different companies. I hope that doesn't go away, the offers, because it's something that I do love to do.
Well, you never know who's listening to this.
Never know who's listening. Tune in.
Well, thank you so much for taking part in the Panto podcast.
Thank you, Hayden. Thanks so much for asking. I appreciate it.